Bill Cates here, and thanks for enrolling and registering for Diffusing Objections to Acquire More Clients. We apologize for the late start. We had a technological glitch. People are still joining. We had over 400 sign up, but we're going to get going because I don't want to punish you for being on time. So let's get this thing cooking. There we go. Get ready to take a lot of notes because I'm telling you, this is going to be a high content program. I'm going to give you a lot of things to say, a lot of very specific words to say. So I hope you're ready to take a lot of notes. We will be recording this. No, not with an old wall and sack tape recorder, but we are recording this right now. Well, I won't be sharing the slide deck. We will be sharing you a link. So if you have to cut out a little early or you want to share this with someone else in your office or a firm, then by all means we will send you a link. If you've been registered, you'll get the link to the recording. And since we're not sending out the actual slides, if there's a slide that you like with verbiage on it or a process on it, then just grab your smartphone, grab your iPad or whatever you got and take a photo, and that way you'll have that particular slide and you won't lose that information. We are going to take your questions kind of as we go a little bit. And also at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So all you have to do is submit it in the question box. I'll be, taking a breather every now and then and answering questions. If a question comes up to you later, an hour from now, a day, a week, a month, a decade, there's my email address. It goes straight to me, billcates@referralcoach.com, and we'll answer your questions. So I've got a little bit of egg on my face because for the longest time I was spelling diffuse wrong. I was doing diffuse rather than defuse, which is like to defuse a bomb. So we're not trying to overcome objections. We're not trying to do anything other than understand and possibly diffuse the objection so it's no longer a blockage. And the truth is sometimes you can do this and sometimes you can't. In fact, there's really I'm going to give you as much as I possibly can in the short period of time that we have together. And then near the end, I'll share with you an opportunity to go deeper if you want to get better at not just diffusing objections of all kinds, but just getting more referrals, acquiring more clients. And every now and then I'm going to share with you a success story of someone who's done very well with our system to show you that what I'm teaching here really works. This is not pie-in-the-sky theory. This is, people do this. It works for them. Lee Miles in Jackson, Michigan said that just last week he used the VIPS process and added 12,000 commissions that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So this works for folks new in the business. It works for veterans, 30 years in the business, and everything in between. So there's two ways really to address objections. One is to engage in behavior designed to minimize objections, things you can do all along the way that will minimize the likelihood of getting an objection, and we'll talk about that today, and then dealing directly with the objection. So, if someone does object, I want to think about it, or I don't like to give referrals. We'll cover those specific ones in a little bit. And then how do you deal with that appropriately without being aggressive? I was doing a live presentation. I love speaking live to groups, and the guy says, well, our managers are telling us to not back off until we hear no 5 times, until we hit the objection, 5 different ways 5 times. I'm thinking, oh no, that's what gives people in this industry a bad name, bad reputation. So we're going to give you a little more dignified way to look at objections that come up. In the promotion for this, I talked about this will not only work with referral objections, it'll work with any objection, even objections you get from your teenage daughter. I used to have a teenage daughter. She's 22 now, but one thing about teenagers, there's nothing that good solid reasoning won't aggravate further, right? But this formula I'm going to give you will work in any situation. So let's look a little bit at the anatomy. Now, someone's saying they can't hear. So all I can say is make sure your speakers are turned on, or that you've called in using the telephone. I have someone listening in on this, and she would come running in and tell me that she couldn't hear me. So try logging in again. Maybe that'll take care of that. So let's look at the objections. What goes on when someone actually does object. All right, someone said loud and clear from Long Island. Well, thank you. You know, maybe they don't really trust you yet. I mean, this is a big thing. You know, a lot of people say, I get objections, you know. Well, maybe you're not building trust. And so let's talk a little bit about the behavior it takes to minimize objections by building trust in the first place. You know, a lot of things. Number one, do your homework before you contact the prospect. Get on LinkedIn, look at their profile, Google their name, look them up on Google. If they have a very common name, a little harder to do it, but LinkedIn works pretty well. If you're selling a B2B kind of situation, business to business, then certainly there's other ways to look people up. But do your homework, and when you come knowing a little bit about them, having visited their website, having looked at their LinkedIn profile, and let them know that. Let them know, you know, in preparation for today's call or preparation for today's meeting, you know, you wanted to learn as much as you could on your own so that you ask the right questions and you share the right information. Well, guess what? That engenders trust when people know that you're taking the time, that you're not just winging it first time on the phone. You know, asking the right questions. Boy, we could do a whole webinar just on asking the right questions, but questions that demonstrate knowledge of their world, their situation. So let's say you're a financial professional and you're working with someone who works for a large company. You know, do an ELISA report and get a snapshot of what their 401k plan looks like, and then ask some questions about that. Demonstrates that you have knowledge about their situation. The more you can ask the right questions that also demonstrate your credibility, the more you build trust. Asking good questions builds trust. Now, it can't be an inquisition. What I like to do is I like to get permission to ask questions. So I say, you know, for us to decide whether it makes sense for us to continue our conversation, I do have a few questions I'd like to ask you. Would that be okay? And, of course, they'll say yes, of course. But that softer approach really lets you in a little bit better, and it builds trust. Look, we're not trying to manipulate people to trust us. This is really just a genuine thing we're trying to do here, right? Don't just listen, you know, clarify and listen some more, right? Most people listen waiting to talk, right? Be honest. Let's be honest. Most of the time when we're listening waiting to talk. Well, may I share with you a better strategy is to listen, and then listen for something that you can ask a question about, to seek clarity about, right? Someone says something, say, tell me more about that. Someone says something, well, hey, that's interesting. You know, I've had a similar experience. Tell me more about your experience. So you can throw yours in a little bit, but listen. Don't just listen to speak. Listen to clarify. Listen some more. And then provide value as quickly as you can. You know, we tend to trust people who provide value to us, even if they're not going to make any money out of it, right? If you can teach them, help them with solve a little problem, a small problem that may have, you know, nothing to do with the work you do, or may have everything to do with the work you do, but you're just in there trying to solve a problem as quickly as possible. Solve a quick problem, create a quick result for them, and they will trust you. Again, this is not manipulative trust. We're really trying to do the things necessary to create good relationships. This is something we work on. We just don't wing it around this. And then ultimately, what a great strategy is to teach people how to buy what you sell. What do I mean by that? Well, a buddy of mine, Dave, is a roofer, and what he does is this. He says he used to go to the home, and very successful roofer, by the way, many crews. You know, most of his time he does estimates in the morning, and then in the afternoon he plays golf, plays on his boat, whatever he can do to have fun. And what he used to do is go to the home, measure the roof, run the estimate by the homeowner, say, we'd love to do your roof, and sold some roofs that way. Now, this is what Tommy does. He goes to the home, he says, look, we measure the roof, we do an estimate, and then we say to the homeowner, look, whether you work with us or another company, your goal is to get a good roof at a fair price. True? And the homeowner goes, yep, that's what we want. Well, regardless of who you use, make sure they give you heavy gauge flashing, because a lot of roofers will give a lower grade flashing, and that causes problems and damage over sometimes very quickly. Make sure they give you a proper nail pattern. A lot of roofers, out of haste or ignorance, won't nail the roof down properly, and that causes problems down the road. So what's he doing? He's teaching them how to select the right roofer. Does that apply to your world? Absolutely. whoever you use, whoever you go with, whatever decision you decide to make sure you do this, you do this, you do this, and you teach them. If you go into a store to buy a mattress, right? One guy will say, lay on the mattresses, tell me what you like, and, that's the best one for you. Another person will say, well, lay on this. Okay, see how that feels. Now lay on this one. Do you feel the difference? Let me tell you why you're feeling that difference. Who are you going to spend 10% more with? The guy who taught you, the guy who educated you. This is a lot of different ways to build trust, right? So someone asked a question, is it okay to tell someone you've looked them up on the web? Is this not stalkerish? I think it's all in how you deliver that message. If you say to them, well, I went to your LinkedIn site and saw that you know so-and-so and da-da-da, no, you don't start with that. But if you say, before I got on the phone with you or before we got together, I wanted to make sure I was prepared as best I could. And so, I went to your LinkedIn profile. I noticed that you went to Harvard. I noticed you went to Towson University. I know, great, good school, blah, blah, blah. So no, it's all in how you bring it up, really. And you might even, you might even let them know that. You might say, look, before we get together, I like to do my homework. Do you have a LinkedIn profile? Well, yeah, okay, great. Would you mind if I just took a glance just to get just to learn a little about you? Oh, okay, that's fine. So no, it's really all in how you deliver that message. We've got another question. How would you address the above objection? Let's see. I don't share people's personal information. Well, we'll get to that, all right? We'll get to these questions. All right, so you're all getting ahead of me. Now, obviously, working from referrals and introductions brings you in at a higher level of trust, right? We have to show up trustworthy, and there's no better way to show up trustworthy than the borrowed trust that comes along with referrals and introductions. So, the most important ingredient, right, in gaining a new client is trust, and so we got to show up at the highest point of trust. That's a referral. That's an introduction. Maybe they don't see your value, right? If they don't see your value, they're not going to move forward. They're going to have objections, right? One of the main reasons why people object to an offer is they don't see the value. So it's pretty important that you articulate your value, right? So here's some basic things that you want to make sure you have some very clear, succinct, confident answers. The person who taught me about this is Leo Pusateri, and as he calls it, beautiful Buffalo, New York. And he says, you got to make sure that you have good, confident answers to these questions, right? What do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it for? Do you have a target market? Are you targeting people in their company, in their industry? Are you an expert in their area, their niche? What makes you a little bit better than others out there? Some people say, what makes me different? What makes me unique? Well, what makes me a little bit better, right? Why am I the right person for this? What do I bring to the table that other people don't bring that makes me a little bit better than others out there? Be confident about this. Don't be arrogant, but be confident. And how do they benefit? So look, these are the questions that people need the answers to before they will buy from you, before they will do business with you. Now, sometimes they'll actually ask you these questions, but even if they don't ask you these questions, they're in their head, consciously or unconsciously, and so you've got to make sure you have good, clear, succinct answers. Now, here's an experiment or something for you to do for the remainder of the day, maybe the remainder of the week. When you talk to a colleague, when you talk to a small business owner, when you talk to a salesperson, ask them a couple of these questions. What do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it for? Right? What makes you different than other people who do what you do? What makes you a little bit better than other people? And then listen for their answers. If there's hesitation between when you ask this question and then the answer, if they're hemming and hawing, you'll see how that reduces trust and credibility. And you'll also see if they have good, succinct, clear, confident answers, you'll see how that builds trust and builds credibility. So if they're not seeing your value, it's possible you're not articulating your value as clearly as you need to be. Maybe they don't like you. Look, not everyone's going to like us. Sales trainers will say, well, they're not objecting to you, they're objecting to your offer. Or they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting your offer. Well, look, sometimes they are rejecting you. Not everyone's going to like us. We got to get over that one. But here's a few thoughts around likability. It's a hard thing to teach. Please be yourself. Be authentic. The more authentic you are, if you've got a sense of humor, use it. If you don't have a sense of humor, don't try to be funny, right? Just be yourself. Be authentic. Be passionate. Obviously, you've got to pay attention to other people's styles. and give them the gift of your flexibility, right? If you're kind of laid back and indirect in how you communicate with people, with a driver, with someone who's very direct, you're going to look, weak and indecisive, and so you've got to up your directness a little bit. On the other hand, if you're very direct, you can be pushing people away and not even realizing that you're pushing people away. So adjusting to their style is a great tool. Again, not to be manipulative, but just give them the gift of your flexibility. Like I said, have some fun if appropriate. I'm a playful guy. You see that from my style. It's the only way I'll do it. And you know what? There are probably a few people that don't like that, but most people do. And I've already talked about listening. We tend to like people who listen to us. We tend to trust people who listen to us. Right? So they're stuck in inertia. The biggest objection that you and I face quite often is inertia, right? In getting someone to move forward with the product, with the service, with the value that we bring. And if we can't shake them up a little bit, if we can't provoke them a little bit, if you will, then we're not going to get them out of that inertia, right? So how do we help people get unstuck from where they are? We acknowledge that change is difficult. We may say, look, we know you've been, in this current situation for a long time, and obviously some things have been working well for you, and I want to acknowledge that. And obviously I'm here because maybe things aren't working as well as you'd like them to, and you've got some new goals you'd like to reach. And I know that change can be difficult, right? So one of the things that we like to do is not go too fast and just help you get used to that possibility of a new solution to your situation. So now your words may be different than what I just said, but we're acknowledging it, right? We've got to acknowledge the objection that's in the room, if you will. Foreshadow your leadership. You may say to a client, one of the reasons why people like to work with me is because they know that I don't avoid the difficult conversations, meaning there are times in my relationships with clients where I will suggest something that I believe they should do. And I believe that's me kind of exerting my leadership, not control, but leadership. There may come a time when you're avoiding doing something, putting off doing something. Do I have your permission to point that out? And they'll say, well, yeah, that's why I need you in my life. Well, okay, good. So foreshadowing that, this will help them. So when you get to that place where they are stuck in inertia, you can say, when we first got together, you may recall I brought up the idea that a lot of people resist change and don't always do what they need to do as quickly as they need to do. And yeah, well, I think this is one of those times. So when you foreshadow that, it makes a huge difference. Always be thinking what's best for them, right? All of this that we're talking about here today has to come from that place of what's best for them, right? And then make a confident recommendation. If I were in your shoes, here's what I would do. Here's even a better one. What others in your situation have done is this. One of the things that motivates people and gets people unstuck is what we call social proof. Now, social proof can come in the form of a testimonial, and there's a lot of folks on this call that aren't allowed to use testimonials. But social proof is also what other people are doing. So you'll see in a little bit, I'm going to talk about a thing we've got going at Referral Coach, and you'll see that I say, join me, join us, because other people are doing this. So what others in your situation have done is that creates social proof, and that helps people get unstuck from their resistance, their fear of moving forward. See, right now we're working on all the things we can do to minimize the objections in the first place. Andre Duffy says your approach to referrals is a breath of fresh air compared to the old style methods. Your value discussion strategy alone has produced referrals for me. So we're going to talk about the value discussion in a minute, and this is a critical thing you can do to build trust, build engagement, and minimize the objections. Look, some people are analytical. Some people really are analytical, and they really do need time. So, how do you deal with analytical? My father was a super analytical. He was a statistician for the federal government, right? And so they sort internally. There's two types of ways people buy, if you will. External sort, internal sort. And depending on what we're shopping for, not to reduce what you do to people shopping, but depending on what it is, we may be sorting internally or externally. In other words, we're gathering the information and then we're going to make a decision. Or we want someone else to help us with the decision. It's always good to know whether you have someone in front of you who is sorting internally or externally. Analyticals tend to sort internally. They tend to gather information and then believe they're capable of making the best decision. So if that's the case, then of course they need evidence. These are the folks that will actually read everything you give them, and they'll find the typos and point them out to you, right? So we've got to provide evidence. Referrals are a great piece of evidence, are they not? And sometimes we have to give them time, but we have to stay proactive, right? In a minute, we're going to deal with the objection, I want to think about it. Sometimes you can help people move through that. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they really do need time. Sometimes they give you the I can't think about it objection because you haven't provided the value or they don't trust you, and that's their way of saying no, right? People give us no's disguised as maybes, and so we have to watch out for that. Maybe you haven't activated their emotions. People buy emotionally. We know that. People make a decision to work with us out of the emotional part of the brain. So how do we activate the emotional part of this conversation, right? Discuss your why. I was having a conversation with a gentleman this morning about this. Why you do what you do, right? Why did you get in this business? Why do you work for the firm you work with? Why are you more excited about the work you do now more than ever before? Share your why. This is what connects human to human, is the why you do what you do. Now look, maybe you got in this business because you were told that you could make a lot of money and have flexibility over your schedule. Okay, well that's true, but somewhere along the line you realize you really help people, and so that's the why I'm talking about. And not everyone's going to ask you, why do you do what you do? I got asked that this morning, but you're talking about how you do what you do and what it looks like, and here's who we serve the best. And let me tell you a little bit about why we do what we do. There's a gap between where people are and where people want to be in terms of their confidence and ability to create referrals and personal introductions and grow their business. And I just derive incredible pleasure from helping people close that gap of confidence and try on new ideas and try new behavior and produce better results. That's why I do what I do. It's very gratifying, right? So that's why I do what I do. Why do you do what you do? Share that. You will feel the energy in the room change when you talk about your why. Discuss implications of the problems. Maybe you're familiar with the book Spin Selling. Well, the I in spin is implication, impact of the problem. If someone's having a problem, someone's having an issue, if there's a gap in their life of where they are and where they'd like to be, what is the implication? How is that showing up? How is it showing up to you? Right? Can't sleep at night. Family's concerned. What does it look like? What's the implication of the problem? This is a very powerful thing, and this, of course, activates the emotional part of the decision process. And then when you talk about the benefits of the work you do, of your process, of your products, of your service, talk about the impact. Say things to them, your clients and prospects. How do you think that would impact you? Or how does that resonate with you? Or try that on for a second. How do you think other folks at your firm would react to that? There's a lot of different ways to get into the impact of the benefit, but when you talk about the benefit of your service, of your value proposition, that's good. We need to translate our features into benefits, but what's more powerful and engages them emotionally is when they're thinking through the benefit, right? What does the benefit look like to them? How do they resonate with that? And then what happens is now they're getting engaged in this conversation. They're getting engaged in the solution, and quite often they're selling themselves, if you will. And maybe you're not referable yet, right? When we get into the objections you get around referrals or not getting referrals, maybe you're not referable, right? So how do you become referable? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit. Robin Wolf's been in this business for, I think, 24 years now. Last month, she received 12 quality introductions and have already set 7 appointments. She's having fun with this because she knows the process works and she's making it work. So let's talk a little bit about your referability. How do you know you're referable? Well, you're getting referrals without asking for them. Everyone in this call, myself included, should be getting referrals without asking. If you're not getting referrals without asking for them, then there's clearly something missing. And so let me share with you, now if you've been on some of my previous webinars this year, I've already shared the statistic from Julie Littlechild with Advisor Impact, but this is such a powerful part of her study. We're looking at satisfied clients. Satisfied clients are very loyal, but there's a low correlation between satisfied clients giving referrals, right? We want satisfied clients, sure. We want loyal clients, sure. But that's not enough to create referrals. We need to create engaged clients where there's 100% loyalty, and 98% of the engaged clients in the study she did gave referrals, one or more, in the previous 12 months. Who gives referrals? Engaged clients give referrals. And so we've got to make sure we have processes in place to create that engagement. And now we can create engagement very quickly in the relationship. But when we create engagement quickly in the relationship by bringing value, then what happens is objections go down. Why? Because trust goes up. Trust goes up. Value goes up. Perceived value goes up. Objections get reduced. So we got to bring value. Now we got to have responsive service, but responsive service is just the price of being in the business world these days. People will assume that you're responsive. Talking about responsive service is not enough to set you apart from others. You got to start with great value, and then you got to keep bringing value. You've got to have processes, systems in place, a client service model, a client service promise in place that will continue to bring value and that will build business friendships. It's the business friendship that's the ultimate engagement. Now, I'm not talking about going out late at night, drinking and telling each other deep, dark secrets. I'm talking about just creating a relationship that goes beyond the core work that you do, where you talk about the family, you talk about hobbies and interests and sports and faith and whatever is of value to you. And then you create that business friendship, and that's the ultimate. So you got to lead with value, right? You got to have a process that makes you referable. If you sell products, if you sell life insurance or whatever it is, that's not what makes you referable. What makes you referable is the process of doing business with you, asking good questions, teaching, putting them through a process they haven't experienced before. If you're hearing some prospects and clients say, wow, I've never done this before, I've never been as thorough, now you know you got a process bringing value quickly. And then checking in with your clients, value discussions. This creates engagement and it creates referrals without even asking, right? Harvard Business Review reported a study. He says that a client does not rate you as completely satisfied, they're a candidate to move their business somewhere else. So we've got to make sure we check in. We've got to make sure everything is where it needs to be, right? We got to close that gap, and the way we do that is to check with them. We talk to them. We have this value discussion. First of all, let's check in about something we can control, which is our communication, our relationship. Anything not working? Look, 99% of the time your client's going to say, no, everything's good. Well, great. How do we continue to earn your business? What is working? And this will create referrals without even asking. Let me give you a case study. Some of you have seen this already. Jerry Atkinson, you see I like to have photographs of people. Andre and Robin. Well, I don't have a photo of Jerry yet, so I drew a likeness. And Jerry, loved this idea of the value discussion. So he got up in front of the room after I did my talk and said, look, for anybody who does 12 in-person value discussions in the next 6 weeks, I'll give you $250 of travel and entertainment money, right? So 16 advisors actually completed the assignment. They had the 12 in-person value discussions, and those 16 advisors generated 132 unsolicited introductions just from the value discussion alone. This value discussion creates engagement, creates referrals without even asking. So please make sure you're checking in with your clients on a regular basis. It's building the trust, building referability. You'll get fewer objections if you do ask for referrals. Now, what about the recurring objections that come along, right? There's certain objections that you just get all the time. Maybe you get the I want to think about it objection all the time, or your price is too high objection, or whatever it is. Right? What we want to do with those is, first of all, we can foreshadow them and hit them before they actually come up. Now, the ultimate foreshadowing in movies is from Star Wars, and Darth Vader. I don't know if you know that Darth Vader in Dutch means dark father, right? And most people never knew that. So then when they come on the screen, he goes, Luke, I am your father. Right? Everyone's surprised. Oh, Darth Vader is his father. But guess what? They've been foreshadowing that for a bunch of episodes before this, right? Foreshadowing is a very powerful thing. So let me give you a couple ideas. Bob, this is one that you want to take a picture of, by the way. Bob, one thing I want to mention before we get going on the first item in the agenda. As we go through this process, many people think of other folks who should know about this process but aren't sure how to introduce me because they assume their friends and colleagues must already be working with someone. The truth is, most people I bring on as clients these days were working with someone else before I was introduced to them, as you were. So let's not let that stop us from bringing this important work to others. We'll come up with a way that makes it work for everyone. So we're not really asking for referrals, but we're foreshadowing it, and we're foreshadowing the objection, aren't we? The objection is all my friends are covered. All my friends are working with someone. Well, guess what? We're handling that one way before it even comes up, just by foreshadowing it. And of course, you can bring it up first, head it off at the past. You know, Laura, at this point, I know that if I were you, my head would be swimming with thoughts and questions. Do I really need to do this? Is this the right action for me to be taking? So let me ask you, what questions are coming up for you right now? Let's talk through what you're thinking and feeling about this important decision. So now we're not just saying what we have to say and hope they say, yep, I want to sign up with you. No, we're talking about what's coming up for you right now. How are you reacting to this, right? What are your questions so far? Checking in all along the way. And now what we're doing is we're going to head these objections off at the past. Be prepared for objections, not surprised, right? We know that we get objections, and that's the whole point of this webinar, I guess, is that we have some tools in our toolkit, so we're not surprised, right? We're not afraid of the objection. If you're afraid of the objection, then you won't do what it takes. If you're afraid of the no, you won't do what it takes to get to the yes, right? Jennifer, look, I understand. Some people are not comfortable with this process, and the last thing I want to do is make you feel uncomfortable. Tell me more. Have you had a bad experience? Or, Al, I'm not surprised that most folks, are likely working with someone else. Most smart and successful people know that value of professional advice. If you don't mind, I'd like to explore this a little bit. So when someone gives you an objection, any part of the work that you do, your first reaction is to not be surprised and not start to go, oh, objection. No, it's to learn about it. It's to explore this, and you'll see that more as we go. Right? Don't be surprised. This happens, right? Cosmo Boy, he went to our boot camp. We have our next boot camp in April. He says, the training and coaching gave us a tremendous amount of confidence. Since we started asking for referrals, we've been getting great answers. It's like a truth serum. That's the value discussion. You made us realize how referable we are, and we've had almost no resistance from our clients. So what's the objection formula? This is what you can apply to every single objection you get, no matter what. First, acknowledge their perspective. Very important. I know some people don't like to give referrals. And don't say, but. We're not trying to counteract that. We're trying to learn more. Look, I know some people don't like to give referrals. That's fine. I'm curious. Can you tell me more? Have you had a bad experience? Curious is a good word. Tell me more are good words. You're trying to understand the objection. When you are seeking to understand their objection, now they're not digging their heels in, right? They're not feeling like you're fighting them. You're appreciating, acknowledging their perspective. You just want to learn a little more about it. Now, sometimes you can gently reframe their thinking, and I'll give you some specific examples in a second, and move forward. And sometimes you have to set it aside. Say, well, I know that's an important issue. Would you mind if we just set that aside for a minute? A couple other things I want to ask you about, want to talk to you about, and then we'll come back to that. Would that be okay? Okay. And so sometimes if you can set it aside just for a little while and continue with your process, the objection goes away. It no longer is relevant. And sometimes you do have to bring it back. Sometimes you're going to answer the question later. Sometimes you set it aside. Sometimes you have to back off, right? So let's apply the formula, right? Minimize the referral objections by asking in the best way. Now, I don't have a lot of time to talk about this. I've talked about it in previous webinars. I'll talk about it in future webinars. But the VIPS method is clearly the best way to ask for referrals. And when you do it this way, you will get fewer objections. When you're highly referable, you have the value discussion first, so they get in touch with the value. That's very important. You get in touch with the value. And then you suggest names and categories. You come prepared. You say, look, we're just brainstorming here. I've got a couple ideas I'd like to run by you. Can we try that? And they go, well, okay, what do you have in mind? I'm telling you, using the VIPS method, you will get fewer objections because they don't feel like you're pushing them into something that they don't want to do. You're just brainstorming. You're just exploring. And have fun with referrals. Boy, one of the best ways to diffuse referral objections is just have fun. Art's a financial professional in Baltimore, and he says he has fun. He's just a fun guy, and his clients know it. He says, look, I'm looking for about 100 people. And his clients laugh. They go, Art, I don't even know 100 people. All right. How about 5? Now, 5's not so bad. Now, that's his style. He's just having fun. You can have fun as well, right? What happens when you have fun dissipates any bad juju, any bad energy, right? And Doug is a financial professional in the Midwest, in Omaha, in fact. He says, we're just brainstorming here. First of all, do you know any lottery winners, right? And what happens? The clients laugh. do you know any lottery winners? No, I wish I was a lottery winner. And he says, yeah, I wish you were too. And so what happens? Dissipates any uncomfortableness they might have, you might have. So if you can have fun in all of this, makes a huge difference, right? I'm having fun today right now. All right? I don't give referrals. Applying the formula. That's fine. I know some people don't. Can you tell me more? Have you had a bad experience? Look, I hear you loud and clear. And the last thing I want to do is anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. If we could craft an approach that felt comfortable to all parties, to you, to them, might you be open to identifying one or two people who should at least be aware of the important work I do, or at least deserve to be educated in this important work? Well, yeah, I guess if I could contact them first, yeah, okay, great. So I was thinking about your sister. Or if you have to back off, I understand. Just wanted you to know I'm never too busy. See if I can be a resource for others you care about. So applying the formula. I'd like to speak to them first. That's great. I'd prefer you do that as well. So you're not surprised. You're not thrown off. In fact, we need introductions these days. We don't just want word of mouth. We want introduction, right? Sounds like you want to be careful how we proceed. Yeah, that's true. Well, do you have some specific people in mind, or do you just want to go slowly with this? Well, I want to be careful. I completely understand. Have you had a bad experience? Well, kind of. Look, if we could craft an approach, da-da-da-da. See, that's the formula. Can you see how important it is to explore the objection? Most sales trainers teach overcoming objections. They teach the rebuttals. Look, the reframe can be important. Having them look at that from a different point of view can be great, can be very important, but they don't want to hear that from you. They don't want to hear the rebuttal. They don't want to hear the reframe until you know that they've heard them first. I hope that's what you're getting out of this. She's already working. I'm not surprised. You're trying to protect my time, not sure how to introduce me. Well, may I share my perspective? Most of the people I begin to work with, working someone else, and you heard me cover this already. So take a picture of this one if you want. And don't worry, we're going to be sending you the link. For those of you who got on after I started off this webinar, a little late, sorry about that. You'll get the link to the replay of this, and you can fast forward in that, and you can catch all these slides as they come up through the program. So, on a previous appointment, quite often my clients identify someone who they think should know about the work I do. Sometimes they ask for my cards and pass them out. I love word of mouth. I've also found that just because someone hands another person my card doesn't mean that person will follow through and call me. Inertia is a hard thing to overcome sometimes. Given the nature of the work I do, usually it's best for me to reach out to them as I did with you, and we take it from there. How does that sound? Right? Teaching people how to give out a card. You can teach them, you can foreshadow this as we start to work together. My clients like to introduce me to folks, and sometimes they want to give them my card, which is great, and then you teach them how to do it, and you realize that it usually takes more than handing out a card, right? Someone wants to think about it. Now what you want to say is, what's there to think about, right? I've made the case. Well, sometimes people do need to think about, you acknowledge it, tell me more, right? Exploring the objection. Can I share my perspective? Tell you what, let's get the paperwork started, knowing if you change your mind, that's perfectly fine. So we're kind of acknowledging it, we want it, and then we're setting it aside a little bit. Sometimes that can work. And look, here's what happens. When you start to explore the objection and try to figure out the reason why, if someone says, I want to think about it, it's possible they really want to think about it. It's also possible they're saying, no, I don't want to move forward. They're giving you that no disguised as a maybe. But as you explore it, if you don't try to rebut it or you just don't accept it at face value, if you just try to explore it, then you find out what's really going on for them, right? Don't accept objections at face value and don't rebut objections. Explore them. Learn about them, right? I want to talk this over with my CPA, or if you're from Canada, your CA. That's fine. I'm curious. Who's your CPA? Maybe I know him or her. Well, I don't know Eddie. Tell me a little more. Do you use him as one of your key advisors in this area? How has he advised you in other decisions similar to this one? What are we doing? We're exploring. Now we're reframing. I have an idea. I often speak with CPAs on behalf of my clients so that I can fully explain my recommendations. Then all three of us are in the loop, and you can make the best decision. Is that okay with you? Right? So that's reframing. We're exploring, and then we're reframing. How do you get good at objections, referral objections, any objections? You just get in there, right? You just get into the conversation. I know some questions are coming through. I want to cover a few things before we get to them. Don't worry. Sean Jameson in British Columbia said, the system has allowed me to radically step up my referral results. Using the VIPS method for asking, my insurance production is up 300% this year over last year, right? Guys, gals, we know this works, right? So I'm going to tell you how to back out of this, how to back out of your quest for referrals if someone doesn't want to do this. I'm going to answer your questions. But for us to have a free webinar like this, just like you do a free, presentation to a group, right? We've got to find a sponsor, a way to monetize this, if you will. So I am very excited about an opportunity that I want to share with you. And some of you thinking, oh no, here comes a sales pitch. Well, yeah, I want to tell you about an opportunity we have. It's only going to be about 2-3 minutes, and then we'll get back and I'll teach you how to back off and I'll answer your questions. All right? So, look, you'd like to acquire more high-value clients, right? You know that. Your upside for getting more introductions is huge. You know that. You may feel a little reticent to ask for introductions. Yeah, a lot of people do. This is not rocket science. It's a matter of skill, will, confidence, action, right? It's a matter of being trained and then staying in training. What do athletes do? Athletes train and they stay in training. Are you trained and staying in training around objections, around referrals, around every part of the sales process, right? People know the benefits of referrals, but they aren't taking advantage of the opportunity to get good. I mean, what's going on there, right? So let me tell you about this new thing. It's a virtual learning and training and coaching program. 2 minutes left. We'll be done in a second. And I just want to share it with you really quick. So this is what it looks like. You go into the training center. It's highly interactive. It's really a lot of fun. Keeps you very engaged. The lessons are very short. We have a lot of video role plays, so you're seeing us handle asking for referrals, handle the objections, backing off, getting connected, getting introduced. We're interviewing folks who are doing really well, and we're sharing that value with you. There's just a tremendous amount of value. I am with you every step along the way. You fill a little form, you ask me a question, I'll answer the question with an email. If we can't do it with email, I'll hop on the phone. Did it with a gentleman this morning. I'll hop on the phone for a couple minutes, and we'll figure it out, right? So here's what you get. You get short interactive lessons, easy to digest, coaching all along the way. We have a monthly live coaching call with me. We have our next one next week, and we've got a few folks signed up for that already. We have monthly audio interviews of successful reps and other experts. You can listen online. You can download it. More content added regularly. Scripts, and more scripts. You will never be at a loss for the words. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorize the scripts, but it'll give you the words that you need. We give you a 60-day action plan so you can produce results right away. You learn it today, you join today, you start getting results tomorrow. So, look, we've got a special deal on our webinars. If you've been on our other webinars, you know this. So for the first 100 people, we have over 500 people signed up for this webinar. So for the first 100, you save $200 on the course. So it's $97 for the first month. You get the scripts book that's worth $197, and that's included. Right? So all you have to do is go to referralwebinar.com. It's right there on the screen, referralwebinar.com. Use the promo code RCA200, and you save the $200. It automatically knocks off the $200, and it's $97 for the first month, and then $19 a month after that. Right? How many new clients does it take you to recoup this? How about like a third of a client, a half, a quarter of a client, a tenth of a client, depending on the work you do, right? It's pretty much a no-brainer. So if you go to referralwebinar.com, this is what the screen looks like, and you just click and join. Join us at the Referral Coach Academy. Great learning, great ongoing. You're going to stay referral fit from now and for a long time to come, and you can cancel any time if you decide it's not right for you. Just make sure you use the promo code RCA200. So what I want to do, I've got testimonials up the wazoo, but I want to show you, I want to start to teach you how to back off from the referral request, and I'm going to do it showing you a little piece of the Referral Coach Academy. So you get a sense of what it looks like, and I'm teaching you at the same time. So we're going to go to Virtual Bill, and with the GoToWebinar technology, it's not the ideal way to do this, but so we're going to go real short with this. But I'm going to start to give you how to back off using the Referral Coach Academy platform. Oh, you know what happened? I had to reboot my computer. There we go. Let's go with it, Bill. Oops. More egg on my face, right? There it is. Here we go. In most cases, you probably won't be able to reframe your client's hesitation about giving referrals.
So this chapter addresses how to back off of your request with confidence and professionalism. So your client voices some concern or outright resistance talking about introductions. You've explored a little, but with no success. What do you do now?
Well, let's see. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try another angle.
Please don't. The more you push someone for referrals, the more you irritate them and possibly ruin the opportunity for referrals later. I once spoke for a group, and a member of the audience said he didn't back off until he got 5 no's.
Oh, you already said that, Bill.
No wonder.
I'll change the subject.
This might be better than pushing hard for referrals with a reluctant source.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave a good feeling with you or your potential referral source.
Okay.
When you feel uncomfortable, they feel uncomfortable. Do this a few times, and you'll probably stop asking, and that would be a shame. There's a better answer. Please try again. Yes, this short chapter will show you how to protect your confidence and professionalism when dealing with referral objections in a way that increases the chances of getting referrals from this source later.
All right, so you got a sense of what this thing looks like, and if I can get back to the slideshow, there we are. So client's not ready, you back off with grace, you back off with professionalism. I call it the emergency exit, right? What does that look like? Well, it's simple. You back off planting a seed. The next time you recognize someone you think should know about the work I do, please don't keep me a secret. Makes sense? Oh, yeah, makes sense. Look, I just wanted you to know that I'm never too busy to see if I can help others you care about. Fair enough? Fair enough. And that's it. That's what it looks like, right? So if you're afraid of the no, you won't do what it takes to get to the yes, right? So we just back off gracefully. Here's what we found asking for referrals, and don't worry, I'm going to get to your questions in a second, is, we can ask. Sometimes we get. Sometimes we don't get them. But we know the worst case scenario is that we've planted the seed for later, right? I've been teaching my system for 20 years. I've never, ever had anyone tell me that they lost a client because they asked for referrals. People are not going to stop working with you. We just back off with grace, back off with professionalism, back off with confidence, right? Now, to avoid referral objections, we've already given you a lot of, ways to avoid objections in the first place, right? Be highly referable, use the VIPS method, and don't ask for referrals. I mean, that pretty much will set that one straight, right? Wayne Gretzky, great hockey player, said, I missed 100% of the shots I didn't take, right? So, some ideas of taking action from this as we get into the question and answer section. And please, even if you haven't submitted a question, stay with us, because sometimes some really good stuff comes out of that. Get an objections buddy. Get someone to go through this with you and formulate your exploration, formulate your reframing, think through the typical objections you get, and be prepared for the objections, right? Be prepared for the exploration of the objection. If someone gives you the I want to think about it objection, right? Or someone gives you the, I don't like to share other people's personal information, be prepared to explore that, all right? And then practice. Most people don't practice this. Please, get a group of 3, get a video. Everyone's walking around with their own video camera, right? You're walking around with a video studio in your hand. Practice it, video it, see what you look like. It's amazing. We were doing this once. That guy, every time he started to ask for referrals and got nervous, he put his finger in his ear. Well, he didn't believe us until we showed him the video. And so it's practice. Athletes practice, musicians practice, every professional should practice. And then with firms, one of the things I like to do is host an objections clinic, and we come together and we figure this out. And so everyone is prepared and confident about the objections, no longer fearing the objections. And of course, if you join me at the Referral Coach Academy, we're going to give you everything you need around this. So referralwebinar.com. All right, so let's get into your questions. Here's the first one. Someone says, I don't want to share other people's personal information such as phone numbers, email addresses. Someone says that. What you want to say is, it sounds like you'd want to be very careful on how we proceed with this. Oh, you got that right. It sounds like you've had a bad experience with this. Well, as a matter of fact, I had. Well, tell me more about that. Last thing I want to do is put you through a bad experience, right? If someone doesn't want to share other people's personal information, they may not trust you. They may not trust your process. They may just want to be very careful. And so that's what we do. It sounds like you want to be very careful about this. Yeah. Say, look, all right, why don't we do it this way? Why don't you talk to them first? We'll talk about what you say because we want to make it feel, obviously I want to to be comfortable for you and for them, and obviously I'd like to pique their interest. So let's talk about what you might say, and then I'll follow up, and we'll go from there. Right? You just kind of ride the horse in the direction it's going. Now, if you can get them to create an introduction with email where they CC you, all you've gotten is their email information, and you follow with an email to their friend, their colleague, their family member, and that's the only contact information they have. What's the best way to get someone comfortable to drop their objections? It's to, number one, I've already talked about this a little bit, foreshadow them. If they're frequent objections you get, bring them up ahead of time. Foreshadow them. Find ways to work them into your processes along the way and say, look, you know, some people have this concern as we move forward. I just want to let you know we'll address that when the time comes. Or some people have this concern, and let me share with you, you know, how we handle that, what that would look like in case that comes up for you. A lot of people are afraid to bring up the objection unless the client brings it up. No, if you have reoccurring objections and you wait for them to bring it up, then what happens? Now they're in control. Them bringing the objection at the time they want to bring the objection, they now have controlled the frame of this meeting. You have to control the frame of the meeting, and you do that by bringing it up ahead of time. Don't be afraid to bring up recurring objections. I'm not saying every objection, but the recurring ones, so they don't become a problem anymore. Let's see, I already handled that one. All right. Some other referral training I've had encourages us to not to use the word referrals with clients. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. You know, I use the word referrals a lot, but really the word we want to do with clients and centers of influence these days, I think, is introductions. I think we want to favor the word introductions because that's what we want, right? We want to get connected. Just a name and a phone number. Hey, call George and let him know I sent you. Not enough anymore. It's hard to reach people, right? So, well, you and I will use the word referrals a lot. I like to use the word introductions. I think that's good advice that person gave you. All right, so how do I cancel out this objection? Is that the only objection coming in? No, there it is. No, a lot more coming in, guys. Just looking. Referrals are great, but getting in front of people is the key. I hate to get a referral unless I'm able to get in front of this. And I agree with you, right? In fact, a referral to me, you know, I wrote a book, Beyond Referrals. Why do I call it Beyond Referrals? Because referral isn't enough, right? We got to get connected. To me, it doesn't count unless I've been connected in some way. So if I have people that say they want to tell someone about me, I'll say, great, I appreciate that. You know, can we find a way for me to be appropriately proactive in this? What if you shot them an email and CC'd me on that? Would that be okay? I had one yesterday where a guy wanted to tell somebody about me for a speaking opportunity. And I said, great, could you just could you shoot him an email and CC me, and then I'll follow up that way? And you know my style. You know I'm not going to be aggressive. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Right? So I'm always looking for a way to be appropriately proactive. How would you suggest a young person to explore objections and reply to them concerning their young age? Well, the key for being young in this business is to be really smart and be really good and be really sharp. And I was working with a guy out on the West Coast a long time ago. When he started, he had one of those baby faces. He just looked young, always looks young. And here's what he told his clients. He could see when people would meet him, and if they hadn't met him before, that they gave him a visible response to his youth, his youthful appearance, I should say, right? And so here's what he tells his clients. He says, you know, when you talk to them about me, you can let them know I'm young, but let them know I'm really smart too. And that's what his clients do. And so now the people that come and see him are no longer thrown off by his age, right? He's using it to his advantage, if you will, right? Yeah, I'm a little young, but I'm sharp. Or he's a little young, she's a little young, but she's really smart. Don't let that fool you. So part of the way to get good referrals is to teach people how to refer you, teach people how to talk about you. So you know that's kind of handling that objection up front for the referral. Bill, what is your response to a client that says this? Go ahead and contact my brother, but leave me out of this. You know, call my friend, just don't mention my name. What I would say is, you know, I appreciate that, but I probably won't contact them. And they'll go, oh, why is that? Well, look, if I contact him, he's going to say, how did you get my name? And so I either have to break my trust with you or I have to break my trust with him by lying to him. And I don't like to start a relationship off like that. So obviously there's something going on. You want to be pretty careful about this. Can you tell me more? Can you tell me what's behind this? And so you're exploring. They're usually thrown off a little in the sense that, oh, you're not going to call him? Well, no, because I'm going to start the relationship off on a lie. I don't think that's a good way to start. Well, that's probably true. And so, you know, I'm trying to get that introduction. I probably would not contact this person unless you can come up with a good way. Someone says, I've used the VIPS method and found it very valuable. Good. How do you introduce the introduction concept into the conversation? That's a good question. When they say, I'll talk to them, and then let them decide. So you say, I appreciate the fact that you like to introduce me to your brother. Let's talk about what that looks like. Obviously, I want it to feel comfortable for you and comfortable for him, right? We want to feel safe for everybody. And obviously, I'd like to pique his interest and be able to be appropriately proactive, just to have a conversation, to ask a few questions. The work I did for him may be very different than the work I do for you. So if you could introduce me with an email, and you shoot him a quick email, and we can talk about what you say. We want to keep it pretty short, and I'll follow up. And what I'll probably do is just try to set up a brief phone call. I'll just go from that email and see if I can get 5-10 minutes of his time on the phone. I'll ask him a few questions. He'll ask me a couple questions, and then we'll decide if it makes sense to keep moving forward. That's kind of what it will look like. So you teach them what the introduction would look like. Now, notice I said safe and effective, right? When a Food and Drug Administration is trying to determine if a drug is ready for the market, is a drug safe? Is it effective? Right? Well, that's what we want with our introductions. We want it to feel safe to everybody, feel comfortable for everybody, and we want it to be effective. All right, so I hope I'm getting to all these questions, because the way they do this is the window is really small and it's a little hard to see. Someone says young can also be driven. Let me do one more here, then we're going to have to roll. What's your response to a client says this? Oh, no, we've already got that one. Okay, here's a good one. Can you show number 2 again for recurring objections? No. Shoot me an email, all right? Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. I'll copy that slide to you, all right? Just shoot me an email, all right? So I hope you found this helpful. I would love to have you out with us at the Referral Coach Academy, right? You join us today. Start getting more introductions tomorrow. Just go to referralwebinar.com and make sure you use the promo code RCA200. You'll save $200. This is a no-brainer. This is a way for us to stay in touch on a regular basis with high value. Look, just the coaching call every month, just the interview we do with some folks doing well, that alone is really worth the investment. I'm passionate about this. I think you know this. We know the system works. You just have to stay at it, practice, stay in training, stay referral fit. Bill Cates, Referral Coach International, asking you, who are you going to be introduced to today?